A YouTube viewer, Joker251, they ask, with Reform being a right-wing populist movement and splitting Tory voters, why is there a lack of a strong left-wing populist party? I think this is a great question. Rachel, what do you think?
Well, there are parties on the left of Labour. There are the Greens, who were strong in some areas in the election. If you look at places like Bristol, very strong. Elements of the Lib Dems that you could argue are to the left of Labour. There are also elements of the Lib Dems that you could argue very much are not. There are the nationalist parties, the SNP and Plaid Cymru. So these parties exist. There isn't a single populist left-wing Reform equivalent. And I think, as I think I've said on this podcast before, personally, I think that's because there isn't a single left-wing populist politician like Nigel Farage on the left who is equivalent and who can channel some of that energy. It's not just about where a party stands for, it's about having a figurehead who can carry it. So far, there doesn't seem to be one of those on the left, although Meadway Kenyon has interviewed a potential contender for that role in the Greens. And I think it's as much about personality as it is about party positioning.
Yeah, personality is I think, a really good point. I mean, probably the closest that you can see is someone like George Galloway, whose party, the Workers' Party of Britain, the party itself is not a well-known name, but he himself is this charismatic figure who can gain some weight when he runs for by-elections. For example, we saw in Rochdale, but then of course, in a general election, he lost that seat. And so you do seem to have this ceiling on how far these kind of left-wing populist figures can get. George, what do you think?
Yeah, I think all of that's right. I'd add, I mean, the left have been pretty hopeless at getting their act together in terms of, but they've had numerous opportunities to launch a new party. When Jeremy Corbyn first lost the Labour whip, when he was permanently expelled from the party before the last election, banned from standing as a candidate. Perhaps again when 7 Labour MPs lost the whip for voting for the abolition of the 2-child cap, and they haven't done it. But there are some on the left who now believe that Corbyn and his allies will form some kind of new party before the next election, and perhaps seek, if Zack Polanski becomes the new Green leader, perhaps seek to come to some kind of arrangements with them. I suppose the other thing you'd add is that for all the criticism of Labour from the left, there are some areas in which it has moved to the left of New Labour. Renationalising the railways, introducing the Employment Rights Bill, which has a lot of trade union support. So that's always been a challenge, I think, for any left of Labour alternative, is that you need funding and you need sort of organisational muscle, which trade unions can supply. But as long as the big unions are still affiliated to Labour, i.e. Unite, Unison, the GMB, that's always going to be an obstacle.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before, haven't we, about this idea that if a party like that, like you present there, George, manages to form with some success before the next election, could, somewhere like London or other city seats where you saw surges in votes for independent and pro-Palestinian candidates be the next red wall? Perhaps Labour has been neglecting those voters on the left, and you start to see, MPs losing their seats who otherwise felt quite comfortable with their majorities. I mean, Wes Streeting nearly lost his seat in the general.
Yes, I think Labour needs to be mindful of that vulnerability. This is something Sadiq Khan has consistently warned of privately in exactly those terms, that it could be the next red wall. Obviously, there's the spectre of Scotland as well, where you had Scottish Labour all but wiped out by the SNP. What you need, I think, is a sort of viable alternative, and you need a figurehead. You had a clear figurehead in the SNP. You had a clear figurehead in Boris Johnson in the red wall. And this is why I think people have been so rightly critical of the Greens, because they've missed a big opportunity since the election to really get a proper leader, proper organisation, proper message and programme, and sort of capitalise on that space.
Well, that brings us nicely, actually, to the next question that we've had in. It's also from a YouTube viewer, Mackie in Southsea. They ask, do you envision a new left-of-centre party being started before now and the next general election? So I suppose we were talking about the idea of a populist left, but a left-of-centre party? I mean, Rachel, do the Lib Dems fit that definition?
I think the Lib Dems are trying to fit that definition. And I think it's worth saying that while the Greens have definitely failed to capitalise on some of the opportunities that they've had, if you add the polling vote share of the Lib Dems and the Greens, you get 25 to 28%, which is not that far behind Reform. So there clearly is a sort of pool of voter support who want something that isn't Labour but to the left of it. And that's interesting as well. Diane Abbott was asked this question when I interviewed her at the Cambridge Literary Festival about whether there should be a new left-wing party. And obviously she comes from a tradition of you do everything within the Labour Party, and that external parties just hinder the wider left-wing cause, and you've got to do it from within. She actually said that when Jeremy Corbyn called her up and said, should I run as an independent in Islington North, having lost the right to run as a Labour candidate, she said, no, don't do it. And he said, okay, I won't do it. And then he changed his mind. So I think there's a loyalty aspect in there as well as all the resources and the trade union issues that George talked about. Also, we did sort of have a left-wing new party in the form of Change UK, the independent group. And I think that was that it's 2018 or 2019, and the fact that I can't even remember which
2019.
It was 2019. Yeah. The Brexit years all blur. And like if you look at what happened to those MPs, they all lost their seats. They switched parties multiple times. Some of them ran to be Lib Dems. Yeah. Like it didn't work. So it's a very recent example of trying it and it not working.
Yeah, and I suppose the question really is for a party like this is what does it mean to be left of centre?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is on the Lib Dems, it's interesting, their strategies emphasise they don't want to be seen as left of Labour because so many of their voters are former Tories in the blue wall. You know, the last time Labour was in government under Blair, they did outflank Labour from the left on issues such as the Iraq War, calling for a 50p rate of income tax, calling for the abolition of tuition fees. And so even when they adopt a position which you could say in sort of crude terms is to the left of Labour, say on treatment of Donald Trump, policy towards him, they're not really presenting it in sort of stop the war coalition terms. You know, it's more sort of Hugh Grant in Love Actually. So it's their reply, very centrist. they really don't want to be seen as left wing, and that actually creates an opportunity then, but for the Greens or for a new party.